So we come here on retreat to get away from everyday lives, to be and to share with others going through the ordination process, all having felt some call to ministry. Now, it's usually expected, and it's been my experience at past retreats, that we will spend our time thinking about our call, talking with each other, asking questions, and trying to gain some clarity. And after the retreat, it's natural to assume that you will come away feeling refreshed, renewed, more clearly seeing what is set out for you. Encouraged, we'll go back to our daily lives, still carrying with us some of the focus from the weekend. Well, if encouragement is the expectation, this reading from the gospel stands as more of a dire warning than words of encouragement. Now, a pessimistic tone is to be expected from Luke here, as he writes in the years following the temple being destroyed yet again. He sees in Jesus' word the actual physical destruction of Jerusalem that Luke had just witnessed. Woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing infants is not an academic concept to him. They are not hypothetical swords or captives that he's referring to. No, to Luke, this passage was not about some time yet to come. It was very much about what had just occurred, to the result of 30,000 Jewish dead and the utter destruction of Jerusalem. And this was not without precedent. Luke experienced the destruction of the second temple, the Temple of Solomon having been destroyed roughly 600 years earlier. And going further back, the passage from Samuel we just heard records a defeat so resounding that the Israelites had the Ark of the Covenant taken away from them. It's easy to see how an individual who lived through any of these would have welcomed some warning or foreknowledge of what was coming, knowing that it was time to flee the city. I want to share an image that kept coming to me as I was dwelling on these passages. It was a conversation I had with my father when I was about 10 years old. My dad was a firefighter, and I had gone on a call with him. And it was just around the corner from our house, so we met the engines there. We pulled up, and there's smoke seeping out of the eaves of the roof of this house, but no visible flames. A mother was on the sidewalk screaming that her kids were still inside. Now, as the men on duty were getting the hose out and getting the water pumping, I watched my dad, closely followed by another firefighter, open the front door and charge into this eruption of black smoke. Neither of them had any gear on. They were inside for maybe 2 minutes, but to me it seemed like it was 2 hours. Eventually, they both emerged just as the fire was starting to show, each carrying a kid probably about half my age. Afterward, I asked my dad how he could do that, run into a situation so dangerous, putting himself at risk. And he just sort of shrugged it off and said that's what he had to do as a firefighter, that if he didn't, people would die. Now, this is not sounding like the type of the message that can send you back into the world and encourage invigorated later today, is it? But I think it can, but only if we understand how bad it actually was in the past and what that means for our situations. Now, we are hindered by the distance of time. We see these stories of destruction through the lens of history, one that can tend to reduce the horror and the fear to a plot device or a teaching tool. What was simply a fact of death and suffering for Luke, we receive burdened with meaning and analysis. Over time, it has grown, become bigger, taken on mythological proportions. Now, the larger themes are important. They are the sense that we can make out of the everyday life. But in doing so, we can forget that that's just stories and themes. Not long ago, the world watched as Notre Dame was consumed by fire. And I cannot but think that the way it felt to see those stone walls and soaring spires wreathed in smoke and flame is in some way how it would have looked in Jerusalem in the year 70. A building that, for all human purposes, has stood forever, destroyed. A physical manifestation of worship laid to waste. Desolation, despair, depression, all of these would be natural reactions to such an event. And yet, worse has happened before. And it didn't mean the end. The ark had been lost, but it was recovered. The temple was destroyed, Israel taken into exile, but a return and a rebuilding occurred. In our Christian context, Luke knew that our temple, Jesus, had been destroyed and resurrected. This is where we can find encouragement, but it does not give us a free pass from the bad. We are set free in knowing that it is not an easy path to which we are called. It is, too, in Luke's words, great distress on earth and wrath against this people. It is to worry over stewardship campaigns and budgetary shortfalls. It is to angering people with sermons that are too long and at the same time too short. It is in wrestling with the hard questions of death, doubt, and sin within ourselves and others. When we leave this retreat, we should feel energized, excited, and encouraged. But we should also leave with our eyes open, with a better understanding of what we are being called to, so that when we see our own Jerusalem is surrounded by an army of angry congregants or a stormy vestry, we know that whatever happens, God will be with us. Even if our Jerusalem is trampled, even if we are left staring at the physical or metaphorical ashes of our lives, God is there. It is in those hard times that we are truly called to stand up and raise our heads. This is what I think we as Christians, and more especially those called to Christian leadership, need to see in ourselves. A little bit of firefighter. Not that we are risking our lives, but they were risking our comfort, our state of ease, that we were willing to take on a duty to go into the smoking ruin of the temple that we are presented with, to run in where others run out, to not abandon hope in the face of destruction and hardship, to stand firm and to begin to build anew. As Jesus said, it's not the healthy who need the physician, but the sick. A firefighter is not called until something is burning. We are called not to help the righteous, but the sinner. Amen.